Hello, and welcome to our webcast for September 23, 2016. My name is Christian Debré, and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Turo Vivant Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Turo Vivant Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminate against people with disabilities. Today's topics. First one, two members of Quebec's Commission on End-of-Life Care are accused to being an anti-euthanasia. Second subject, first minor dies by euthanasia in Belgium. So Amy Asbrook will talk about it.
Thanks. Okay, the first topic, two members of Quebec's Commission on End-of-Life Care are accused of being anti-euthanasia, which as if that's a bad thing. On Monday, the newspaper Le Devoir printed an article raising, quote, ethical questions, unquote, about the inclusion of two members on the Commission on End-of-Life Care who oppose euthanasia. So supposedly there's an ethical problem that two members of this, I believe it's 11-member commission, are not in favor of euthanasia.
But it doesn't raise the subject about many members of this committee was militant for euthanasia and assisted suicide.
Right, and this commission, their responsibility is to oversee the program. It's not, they understand what their responsibility is, and they understand that the law is already in effect, so it doesn't really matter that whether they were in favor of or against euthanasia.
Yeah, many people doesn't like the speed limit, but everybody kind of recognize that there is some need of it.
Right. Well, recognize that it's in effect and there's not anything we can do about it.
Yeah.
Le Devoir described the fierce opposition, quote unquote, of attorney Pierre Deschamps and Mireille Lavoie, and questioned whether the commission could be, quote unquote, neutral if two of the members opposed euthanasia. So they're saying that because two of the, maybe 11-person commission oppose euthanasia, they're saying that the commission is not neutral.
Which is the opposite.
Is a little bizarre.
Yeah.
2 out of 11 people is a small minority of people who.
And it is to balance the other side.
Right, exactly.
So if you remove one side, the committee is not anymore balanced.
Right, exactly. Le Devoir implied that letters sent to the commission by the commission to doctors amounted to harassment. The letters questioned whether people who received euthanasia were at the end of life and able to consent. So the commission's responsibility is to oversee and make sure that the safeguards are actually working. And when they received reports from doctors about certain euthanasias, they sent letters to make sure that the people really were able to consent and that they were in fact at the end of life.
Basically, they are just doing their job.
Right, exactly. So then Le Devoir are saying that because they sent those letters to doctors, they were harassing the doctors, and they were connecting that with the fact that two of the members of the commission are opposed to euthanasia. They're making that connection, which is kind of a slim connection since 2 of the 11 people oppose euthanasia, but then there are 9 other people who, didn't oppose euthanasia. Nowhere in the article did Le Devoir question the neutrality of commissioners who had expressed support for the euthanasia legislation.
And who encourage or are militant for euthanasia and assisted suicide are not really neutral either.
Right.
And nobody is neutral in front of the death.
Mhm.
Okay, so you could be balanced but not neutral.
Right.
And the neutrality came in the committee came from a kind of balance in the number of people in it. And if you remove it, so one side or the other, the committee is not anymore balanced.
Right, exactly. Following the publication of the article, the Parti Québécois and Québec Solidaire, which are two political parties in Quebec, called for the removal of two commissioners whose neutrality was called into question. So these two political parties, as soon as they saw this in the Devoir, they jumped on this and said, well, you know, we need to suspend those two people. They sort of jumped on it like a reflex, like
yes,
a political
but it's
reflex.
a political reflex that there is no logical about that except politics.
Right, exactly. In denouncing the call to remove the two members, Health Commissioner Gaëtan Barrette stated that by having a mix of opinions on the commission, the result is a balanced or neutral commission.
At least for one time, I'm really in the same side than Gaëtan Barrette. I was never before, but this time, comment on dit ça, je suis encore.
I'm in agreement.
And I'm in agreement. I agree with Gaëtan Barrette, which is
very,
very rare.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and you know, basically what he's saying is because there's people on both sides of the issue on the commission, that kind of balances it out and it's ultimately neutral. This tempest in a teapot is only the latest in the ongoing campaign by Le Devoir in favor of euthanasia and against those who oppose it. In the past, Le Devoir has ignored the secular opposition and attacked opponents by claiming that opposition is based solely on religious or moral arguments. So this is not the first time Le Devoir has brought up issues around assisted suicide. And what they generally do is they ignore the progressive disabled view opposing euthanasia, and they act like the only people who oppose euthanasia are religious people who use a moral argument.
Which is not true at all.
Which is not true.
Okay.
Right. The other thing
we try to communicate with them many times, and they never send a journalist. Call. They never call. They do nothing to try to understand what is the ordinary opposition of handicapped people.
Right. And the other thing they've been doing is, since the law has come into effect, every time there's a question of somebody maybe not getting euthanasia, they're all over it. They say, oh, this is terrible, somebody's not getting euthanasia, even though that's the form of protection that people get.
Yeah, but if somebody is killed without his consentment, they do nothing.
Right.
And it's more dangerous and it's more harmful for the society to kill people who doesn't want to be killed.
Right.
Than the opposite.
Right. But they act like it's a crime if people aren't killed right away as soon as possible, that sort of thing.
And anyway, this committee just have this effect just after the fact, not before the fact. They doesn't intervene in the action of assisted suicide or euthanasia.
Right.
They just do a report.
Right, exactly. And they're not the only ones. Le Devoir is not the only media that does this. The CBC is the same way. Other media are the same way.
EC is the same way, more than
Canada,
CBC.
Yeah.
CBC at least had do some small effort, but EC never.
Radio Canada.
Yeah. The French Radio Canada do less than CBC, who do almost nothing.
Right. CBC though has done lots of documentaries, and there's another one coming up that's very pro-assisted suicide and euthanasia. So the Devara is not the only one, but they certainly are pretty bad offenders.
Yeah.
Okay, the next topic is the first minor dies by euthanasia in Belgium. A 17-year-old terminally ill Belgian was euthanized in the Flanders region of that country, becoming the first minor to be euthanized since the law was changed in 2014 to allow for the killing of children. So if you recall, in 2014, they changed the law to allow children of any age to be euthanized. And this is the first one that's on record, the first minor on record to be euthanized since that time.
We know that by history, the cycle will accelerate.
Right.
Okay, it starts slow, and slowly it's accelerate, and at the end it becomes uncontrollable.
Right, and there are doctors who already claim that they don't report the euthanasias that they do. So we don't know for sure that it's the first one, but certainly this is the first one that has been reported by the press. In order to be euthanized, a child must be in the final stage of a terminal illness and must comprehend the implications of choosing death over life at a rational level. Minors also need to have asked to die on multiple occasions and receive the consent of their parents and 2 doctors, including a psychiatrist.
Which psychiatrist is not a bad idea.
Right.
Okay? But it's not guaranteed. It's not the only thing who guarantee that it will not happen an accident.
Right. Yeah. The psychiatrist, first of all, isn't doing an assessment for suicide prevention and isn't doing an assessment as to whether this person is suicidal. They're just assessing whether the person understands what they're doing and is competent to make that decision.
So even if the person receives pressure from outside in different way, or not receive the normal pain killing medication or thing like that, it doesn't care.
Well, we don't know what's happening because there's no information about that. So we don't know if the psychiatrists are tracking whether the people are being pressured. We don't know what the psychiatrists
it's not in the law.
Right. There's nothing in the law that requires them to make sure that the person's not being pressured.
So
there's nothing in the law that requires that they make sure that the person's getting good palliative care. It says that they should, but there's no requirement that they have to. And there's no penalty for a doctor who euthanizes somebody who isn't getting good palliative care. Unlike in Holland, where the minimum age for consent to die is 12 years old, Belgium has no minimum age for consent to die. So that's one difference. And, that means that children as young as 8 or 6 or 5 years old could say, I want to die, and they could be killed if somebody
and children
understand.
Most of the time doesn't realize that there is connection between an action and the result. Right.
A lot of children don't understand the permanence of death. And obviously they're supposed to understand in order for them to die. But, again, we can't be sure that they really do. Though news reports say that the person was suffering unbearable physical pain, there was no indication what palliative measures had been tried to control the pain. So, we don't know. And what we do know from palliative care doctors is that most pain can be controlled. So why wasn't that pain being controlled? We don't know.
There is many ways to control pain, and in the outmost you could use palliative sedation, which doesn't have to be continuous.
Right, exactly. The person could have palliative sedation that's temporary while they, just give their body a rest from experiencing the pain, and then they could be brought to consciousness for a period of time. It doesn't have to be permanent. And again, we just don't know what kind of measures for palliative care were given to the person, even if they were at the end of life. Among the questions to be studied in Canada over the next few years is the possibility of allowing minors to have euthanasia or assisted suicide. Many people believe that because suicide is already a major problem among adolescents, allowing them to be euthanized would work against public policy to prevent teen suicides. And that's a real concern because teenagers, their minds are not fully formed. They're in the process of having major hormones acting on their judgment, and their capacity to make judgment is not fully formed. And yet we're saying that disabled teenagers or teenagers who are dying are able to make the decisions that we don't think that non-disabled teenagers are able to make. We have all these campaigns to stop non-disabled teenagers from killing themselves, yet we're saying that these disabled teenagers are able to make that decision, and that just doesn't make any sense. So, in a related incident, 14-year-old Jerica Bolin died yesterday in the state of Wisconsin. Miss Bolin, who had spinal muscular atrophy, had declared her intention to stop life-sustaining treatment at the end of August. Instead of providing suicide prevention services, her supporters collected funds and held a prom for her, attended by 1,000 people.
Yeah, party, she will be dead soon.
Right, exactly.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really awful. Instead of saying this girl wants to die, why don't we all figure out how to make her feel like she should live, and give her suicide prevention services. And she said she was in pain, and nobody thought to investigate why she's in pain, because spinal muscular atrophy doesn't usually cause pain. And so there was a lot of, the disability community brought up the question, why is she in pain? Why isn't the...
Yeah, this is a normal question, which we don't think somebody asked.
Right, and they raised all this money. Why didn't they put that toward giving her therapy for suicide prevention rather than...
A good medical team for anti-pain.
Right, that would have been a good thing. It would have given her maybe another lease on life and maybe she would have changed her mind. But instead, they decided to celebrate her dying, which is...
Have a party, she will die soon.
Right. And they only do that for disabled people. They don't do it for non-disabled people. If she had been a non-disabled 14-year-old girl, you can bet that everybody would have been out there saying, no, there's so much to live for, and that sort of thing. So that was a very disappointing... that had been a big event in the news this summer around the big prom that they had, and her being a big star at her prom, and then her going into hospice at the end of August, and finally her death came yesterday. And when people with disabilities had tried to challenge some of the ways she had been treated, they had been attacked by the public for
cruelty,
saying they were cruel. So,
and for us, it is the opposite who is cruel.
Right, exactly.
Killing people is cruel.
Right. So if you have questions or want more information on the subjects that we discuss here, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet, all one word. You can visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tvndy.ca. tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping us out.
Thank you.
And thanks to you all for being there and watching, and we will see you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.